One thing I have noticed, Eileen, is retreat manager. Sometimes I follow this clock and I go outside. It's a couple of minutes different, which is why a lot of people are coming in. They may feel they're late, but actually they're on time. I think this clock is a bit advanced. Okay, I've got 8:01 here, so I'll change this clock. Yeah. I live in a different time zone. Oops. Okay, that's went too far. That's one of the reasons why you don't really worry too much about time. But if I'm starting the talk and people come in late, it's kind of not fair. Okay, 8 o'clock. Okay, come on. I should stop. Imagine. Yes. Excellent. Well, sooner or later, welcome to today's talk. It's one of the terrible things about our life, especially when we have meetings and everybody has to come together. We always have to, kind of get there on time. And if you're a monk, it doesn't matter, we'll start later, we'll finish later, or start earlier, finish earlier. It's all right if you're the head monk. I often say the talk won't start without me. So if I'm late, it doesn't really matter. You have to wait, it starts when I start. But then sometimes you've got to catch the plane on time. And I must say that Singapore Airlines are very strict with the time. And some of you may know that, was it last June, I gave a retreat over in Sri Lanka. And at the end of the retreat, because I'm well known in there, they put me in the VIP lounge. I should never go there again. This was another place where rich, famous politicians and monks go before the flight departs. And I was in there plenty of time, and the flight attendants, not the flight attendants, the hostesses, said, "Oh yeah, got plenty of time." And then when it came to, you're supposed to go to the gate.
20 minutes before they close. They close the gate 20 minutes before the flight.
Yes, but at least 10 minutes also. So anyway, I've been flying on Singapore Airlines for so long. When it got to about 25 minutes before the flight, I showed the hostesses, "I better get to the gate now." You know what they told to me? They said to me, "Don't worry, Ajahn Brahm. We'll get you there on time." And that really struck me because I usually tell other people not to worry. It was the first time someone told me not to worry. And so I waited a bit longer and they said, "Look, I really should get to the gate." They said, "Look, we told you, don't worry, you're VIP. VIP we always take to the gate last of all." So I stopped worrying and trusted. And by the time I did get to the gate, you could see through the window the air bridge and the aircraft separated. So I had the privilege of spending extra time in the luxury of the VIP lounge in Singapore, in Sri Lankan airport. So because sometimes you have to really be careful with your time. Sometimes you can just let it be and just be late. You have the privilege of being late for my talk. If you don't want to come or you just have to go to the toilet or something comes up, You can always catch up with the talk afterwards. But I don't have that privilege. I cannot be late for my talk. I have to be here to give it. But nevertheless, when we're meditating, we don't have to worry so much about time. In fact, not worry at all about time. That's one of the beautiful things about meditation. You can get into that timeless zone where things just flow. You're not worried about minutes or hours. And hopefully that happens to you in your life as a meditator. Hopefully it happens many times. You go sitting down there and you get a nice peaceful state. You don't worry about time. You haven't got a clue just how many minutes or hours have gone past. When you come out of meditation, you look at the clock and say, the clock must be wrong. I haven't sat that long. But you have. And a great example of that is one retreat which was given in Sydney some years ago. And it was given by a Vietnamese Theravada monk. Now, forest monks don't just live in Sri Lanka. You've got good forest monks, don't just live in Thailand, really good forest monks in Sri Lanka, in Burma. He used to have some really good ones over in Laos, and also in Vietnam. Southern Vietnam was very much Theravada, and in Cambodia. And anyway, this was a Vietnamese Theravada monk. And he started the retreat, usually on a Friday evening. So it's supposed to be 7:30, I think, meditation, and then 8 o'clock, the first talk. And he was quite well known as a full house. And when he started the meditation, everybody meditated with him. But when it got to the end of the meditation session, 8 o'clock, he started at 7:30, the monk was just sitting there. He never came out from the meditation. So they waited for a talk. Maybe he'd come out at 9:30, 9 o'clock, 9:30. He was still meditating there. So all the people who are supposed to be listening to a talk, you know what they did? And they're very practical in Vietnam. They all left and went to bed. Left the monk there, just meditating. When they got up in the morning for the morning meditation and morning chanting, he was still sitting there. When it came to breakfast, he was still sitting there. When it came to the morning talk, he was still sitting there. He sat there, apparently, without moving, without going to toilet, without drinking, without eating anything, for 8 days. And when he came out of meditation, the first thing he said was, I apologize. I should have given you talks. I should have inspired you. And all the people there said, no, we were inspired. Seeing you just sitting there like a Buddha statue, not moving at all, not eating, not drinking, not going to the toilet, just sitting there so still and peaceful. You inspired us, thank you. And he sort of described what it's like. You go into these deep meditations, and time has no meaning for you anymore. 8 days, 8 minutes. When you come out of meditation, you realize, I've missed my lunch. I've missed my flight. So that he was right to ask forgiveness, because what we do as monks who can meditate, nuns who can meditate, lay people who can meditate, if you have got that depth of meditation, you can get so still, I like to get still, you make a resolution. It's called programming your mindfulness. You do that before you go into the meditation. You say, I must come out by, Sunday. That's when you're catching your flights back to Singapore? Some Saturday, some Sunday. So those of you who are going on Saturday, when you meditate this afternoon, please make the resolution. It's only, was it Wednesday today? I must come out on Saturday. Otherwise I must miss my flights. Because that's what happens. Sometimes you go in these deep meditations and you don't know just how long you're sitting for. It's very peaceful, very joyful, but the perception of time vanishes. Other perceptions are still there, but the perception of time is not that important anymore to you. And that programming of mindfulness, you can try that tonight. My first meditation teacher taught me this, and I just tried it just as an experiment. I was surprised how well it worked. He said, when you go to bed tonight, you're supposed to get up at, I think in that retreat, 5 o'clock in the morning. You can set your alarm clock to 5:05. But when you go to sleep, or before you go to sleep, you tuck yourself in the bed, then you make a resolution. I will wake up at 5 a.m. I will wake up at 5 a.m. I will wake up at 5 a.m. You say that to yourself as simple as possible, but as clear as possible, 3 times, paying full attention, then you forget it. You go to sleep. And those first few mornings, I couldn't believe how accurate that was. I'd wake up 1 minute before or after what my clock said was 5 a.m. No alarm needed. The only reason I set the alarm was to give me a sense of safety and security. If it didn't work, the alarm clock will wake me up. It's a much nicer way of getting up in the morning. You just tell yourself what time you want to get up. And then you go fast asleep. And you wake up pretty much accurately at that time. If you take it seriously, pay full attention, full mindfulness, say it clearly, then the mind will follow. It's like the mind can be well trained that way. So that's also what we do in meditation. You know, if you get really nice meditation, but you've got some duty to do, maybe to a family member, or to go to work, or give a talk or something, that's how you work it. You say, I must come out of meditation at 5:50 to do some chanting. Try it. It works. But it also works on even more important levels. I'm not quite sure what the deepest problem in your meditation is. Maybe it is you start to get peaceful, and then you get all these thoughts come up in the mind to disturb you. And you look at those thoughts, what on earth do these thoughts come from? They're not necessary, they're not important, they're not full of insight. How can I sort of stop these? If you try and stop them while they're just occurring in the meditation, you just destroy the peace of the mind. You start talking, and when you're in deep meditation, of course, you're destroying the quietness anyway. So what you do, you give yourself that instruction at the beginning of the meditation. There's a few people, they can get the beginnings of a nimitta, and then either get scared or they do something, they mess around. It's like they get so close and they slip up at the doorstep and can't get in. So what you do, if you try and give yourself instructions while those nimittas are just arising, those instructions are far too coarse. It will destroy the quietness of the meditation. You give those instructions at the beginning of your meditation. You tell yourself, after you've closed your eyes, you've got your body comfortable, you tell yourself, if a nimitta arises, I will not be afraid. If a nimitta arises, I will not be afraid. If a nimitta arises, I will not be afraid. It's called programming mindfulness. And it's amazing how it works. A nimitta starts to come up, and usually your usual response, habitual response, is to get scared or afraid. But then you're just about to get afraid, but your programming interrupts it before it actually disturbs you. And even this instruction of programming mindfulness, I've even given that when you do, as a monk, marriage counselling. I always couldn't figure out, why do people come to a monk for marriage counselling when we've never been married? And I realised the answer is because we're cheap. We don't charge anything. And sometimes, you get some very good insights, and that's one of those insights. As I often say, just a generalization, you can tell how long a person's been married, or a couple have been married, by how they talk to one another. Have you ever noticed that some couples, they get very critical of each other, the longer they've been married, finding fault? And that's a nice thing. They both love each other, they're both really good people. And they come to me for marriage counselling or something, and I say, how come you don't get on together? I get on with both of you, and you can't get on together? Because they're so always really nice people. But somehow or other we get into this bad habit of picking out the faults in one another. And sometimes that bad habit, I've seen it with people, I say, look, just it comes out of my mouth. I start criticising my partner, and then she criticises me, and then I criticise her back. And that's the only way we talk to one another. It's just habitual. And so there is a solution to that. It's programming your mindfulness. When the partner, the problem is not there, when you're away from them, you think of them, and you say to yourself, I will only say kind words to my partner. I will only say kind words to my partner. I will only say kind words to my partner. Something like that. And you have to repeat that many times, many days. And then you find what happens. You go home and your partner's done something stupid, and your habitual response will be, how old are you now? Don't you know just how to lock the door or to drive the car? Instead of criticizing, you're about to do that, but the programming of your mindfulness kicks in. Yeah, no one's perfect. You bumped the car and got a scratch in it. We can fix that. Whatever it is, you say nice words instead of this always habitual criticizing one another. And I learned that by learning how to programming my mindfulness during meditation. And also, I don't know the relationships you have with family members, with friends, me with monks, or anagarikas in the back, sitting there. You know all my tricks now, Ryan, so please share them. And that is, have someone you're having a hard time with, and they come up to you in the kitchen and they say, what are you going to Jhana grow for? I've been working here all the time. Rah, 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 rah. And you say, it makes me a kinder person so I can help you even more. You say something nice instead of something which is criticizing back. You program yourself to do that. And it's amazing it works. You can change your habitual patterns by giving yourself instructions, clear, mindful when you're saying these instructions, peaceful, and allow it to soak in. The one mistake which people make with programming your mindfulness is when you give too many instructions. You sit down and to meditate, now I will watch the breath, and if a nimitta comes up, this is what I'll do. But if it doesn't come up, this is what I'll do. And if I get really restless, this is what I'll do. And if I get too tired, this is what I'll do. Your poor mind gets just so confused what it needs to do. Just one instruction at a time. And number two, don't keep repeating it. 3 times is enough. The simile which I give is that when you leave this retreat to go to the airport, you go in a taxi and you tell the taxi driver, I've just been on a meditation retreat, so please turn off the radio. And I don't need to talk to you. And also don't drive too fast. And also, don't swerve around the corners too fast. I've got a very sensitive body. And I've been practicing compassion. So if any other driver wants to come in front of us, please let them come in. Don't always just cut them off. And look out for kangaroos on the path. We don't want to... And you haven't reached the front gate yet. And that's when the taxi driver says, "Get out. I know how to drive the taxi. You just sit in the back and shut up." And that's kind of what your mind does. One instruction, or maybe two at the most, is fine. But don't overdo it, otherwise it doesn't work. Again, always treat your mind like a friend. If you treat the mind like a friend, your mind becomes so compliant. You give simple instructions, and it likes doing them. So that's a little bit about programming mindfulness, but also about how to make sure that you don't sit too long. You may be surprised. Okay, Ajahn Brahm, that might be for these meditators who can sit for hours, but as for me, after 40 minutes I know it's time to come out because my knees are exploding in pain, my back hurts, everything hurts. And when people would ask me, said, what to do if you have those experiences of everything hurting in your body? You know that, and in your mind as well, being really restless. Because somebody came up to me once at one of the retreats for, please, an urgent interview. Why? He said, I was sitting there, I had an attack of all the hindrances, all at once. And I thought that was really weird. You can have restlessness and drowsiness at the same time. He said, yes. And craving and a will, yes, and doubt, yes, the whole lot. And a few more, which the Buddha never knew about. The attack of all the hindrances. It's like when you meditate, you feel you're going crazy. So much stuff. The interesting part of this, I know I should tell that story afterwards. The attack of all the hindrances, what do? What's the way of overcoming that? And I called this, it is based on one of the famous Buddhist stories, I call it the Nalagiri strategy. The story of Nalagiri, if you remember it from the stories you've heard of the Buddhist temples, that even though the Buddha was very kind, compassionate and wise, still whenever you get into leadership positions, no matter how wise and good you are, there's always jealousy. And so it was the Buddha's cousin wanted to take over. And Buddha wouldn't let him. It's about time he retired. If Devadatta was alive today, he can take over my job. It's very tiring. But nevertheless, so the Buddha refused, so Devadatta was trying to hatch plots to kill the Buddha so he could take over. And one of those plots was, there was this big elephant in the town of Rajagaha. Now we've got a town called Rajgir, but Rajgir was moved out from where the original Rajagaha was. And in the town of Rajagaha, the big elephant had, I think Devadatta, it could have been Devadatta or King Ajatasattu, gave lots of alcohol to the elephant. And so the elephant was like drunk, and then set it charging down the street. And these were narrow roads that are just built for horse carts, chariots, and not for like the multi-lane highways you see in Singapore. This was narrow streets, and the Buddha was coming along one of those streets on alms round with the other monks, just gently holding his bowl, receiving alms food, giving blessing, a symbol of calm, peace, and compassion. In the opposite direction, this big elephant charging along, lost any mindfulness he had, drunk, destructive, smashing everything in its way, treading, knocking over trees. And these two forces were going to meet, a symbol of deep peace and compassion, and a symbol of anger, violence, destruction coming the opposite direction. And all the villagers or townspeople of Ajaka were running for their lives to try and escape being injured or killed by Nalagiri. And the Buddha was just walking calmly towards Nalagiri. And all the villagers told the monks, "Get out of the way, hide, otherwise you may be injured." And all the monks, they jumped over the walls, went in the houses, hid behind the trees, except for the Buddha and his faithful attendant, Ananda. And as the elephant came closer, within sight, Ananda stood in front of the Buddha. "Let the elephant take me. I will protect my master." Was that inspiring? He was willing to sacrifice his life for his teacher. And at this point in the story, I always say, would any of you do that for me? That was a sign that Ananda didn't have enough faith in his teacher. So the Buddha just pushed him aside gently. "Ananda, I will take care of this." So just the Buddha, no one else, walking towards, slowly, calmly, peacefully, towards this violent elephant. Did any of you ever see that movie, High Noon? That was a classic Western movie when I was a kid. I forget who the film star was. Was it Cary Grant or something? But anyway, he was the good guy, and this bad guy was going to kill him. So they're walking down the main road of this western town, all the people watching through the windows but making sure they were out of gunshot range because they didn't want to get killed, for a showdown. One of them was going to die. And they were going closer and closer and closer and closer together. It's like High Noon at Rajagaha. The Buddha versus the elephant. Who would survive? Now the Buddha, I've got lots of, obviously, immense confidence in the Buddha. And you also read about some of those psychic powers he had. Even some of those stories I rejected when I was a young Buddhist, more of a scientist than a Buddhist, about walking those 7 steps and putting his hand up saying, "I'm #1 in the world." I thought, how can you do that as a kid? But I've told you stories, real stories, that can happen. So the Buddha could have very easily grabbed Nalagiri by the trunk, swirled him around his head 3 times, and then throw him over the Ganges River, which was about 300 kilometers away. That'd be a simple thing to do. The Buddha was that strong, quick. What did the Buddha do? He never used violence to restrain a wild elephant who was drunk. Instead, he did something like thinking or saying, "Dear Nalagiri, whatever you do to me, you can kill me, squash me under your feet. You can lift me up in your trunk and smash me against the wall. Whatever you do, Nalagiri, please always remember the door of my heart will always be open to you." It's what we call not just loving kindness, unconditional loving kindness. Whatever you do, even killing me, I will always forgive you. Now I can say that, it may have some meaning to you, but when the Buddha says that, that's enormous power. You know it's true. And then what happened? The Nardigiri stopped, put his trunk down, and the Buddha stroked his trunk. There, Nardigiri. There, Nardigiri. So if you ever come across a serial killer in a shopping mall in Singapore, maybe that might be going a bit far, but would it be? There's so many other stories. I remember this story of this Hindu. He was a Hindu guru in New York City. He was walking back late from one of his talks, from one of the rough areas of New York. And as he was walking along the street, these hoodlums came up. Give us your money. Mac, I think they called him. He said, I'm terribly sorry, I do not have any money. Don't give us that. Give us your wallet. I do not have any money. I'm a Hindu sage. A Hindu what? The way he talked, and this character was in line with being a Hindu sage. He really was one. He said, I never carry any money. And then they all calmed down. These were these hoodlums who would knife you or kill you. And they said, I don't have any money. And then they were so impressed that they actually, at the end, they said, I'm sorry, sir. Have a nice night. And the very fact they said, sir, to anybody, that was in the New York Times newspapers the day after. Amazing that when you're a real thing, you become like invulnerable. My story. Do you want to hear my story? Because sometimes you got no. Well, I don't know. Sometimes I'm crazy. I push my luck many times. Is that what I'm doing? I'm not sure. But when we were doing our grand opening ceremony of Dhammaloka Center, I was in charge of ordering the marquee, chairs, and all that stuff, for our visiting guests. And I remember when at opening, I suggested, let's invite some VIPs. Let's invite the governor of Western Australia. His name was Sir Gordon Reid. And those who know Western Australia, that's where we have the Reid Highway here, named after him. There's nothing wrong with just asking, and he actually came. So amazing, we've got the governor coming, wow. So anyway, I made sure to invite have some good tents, marquees, and some very nice chairs, and also a dozen VIP chairs, with nice upholstery. And I was told by our treasurer, you can get the very best. Don't worry about the costs. It's not every weekend we have the governor coming. We want to make a good impression. So I found a hire company in the suburb of Nedlands. That's another really rich part of Perth. So I said, what's happening? I need the very best. I said, yeah, we'll get it for you, no problem. It's a bit more expensive than usual, but not that much. And so when the tent came and the chairs came, I was helping somebody else while they delivered all those things. And after it was all delivered, I checked. The tent was filthy. But we could fix that. If something is wrong, you don't just complain, you think, well, what to do next? All you needed was the hoses out and to hose it down. The chairs are all filthy too. It must have been in some sort of country show in Australia with lots of red mud everywhere. So we just got our volunteers with cloths to wipe them down, to clean them. But the VIP chairs, you couldn't fix that problem. Of those 12 VIP chairs, there was not one of those chairs had legs the same length. They wobbled. And I thought, look, what would happen? They wobbled a lot, not just a tiny bit. What would happen if the governor or his wife fell over during the ceremony? That would really be embarrassing. So what I did, I got to the phone as fast as possible, called the hire company. It was a Friday afternoon, late. I said, look, I just looked at these delivery, especially the VIP chairs, so unusable. The legs aren't the same length. We've got the governor coming tomorrow. Help! And she said, she was very nice, she's the owner of this little firm, I'm terribly sorry, there must be some mistake. I'll change them straight away. Great. And so I hung up. What I didn't realize, that she doesn't change them. All the workers on a Friday afternoon had already knocked off. And they went to their usual place they go to at the end of work on a Friday, the pub. So she went into the pub, they told me, saying, the Buddhists, they want their chairs changed. And these were people who already had knocked off work, were already into their drinking. They were not happy. So when the truck, the lorry, came the second time with the new chairs, many of you know Nolamara Temple. To access it, you go down Constant Street, then you turn right into Nansen Way. So the truck had turned into Nansen Way, was still going quite fast. And one of the men in the truck jumped out. It was still going fast. And came running towards us. And his hand was clenched. Where's the bloke in charge? I want to see the bloke in charge. He was really angry. He reminded me of Nalagiri. He was also quite drunk. He'd been sent back to work on a Friday evening. He was not happy. Who was the bloke in charge? I walked out to him and said, I am the bloke in charge. And he had his fist right in front of me. His eyes were wide and red. You know, like those, they call them yakas in the sutras? They got these big red eyes. And he reminded me of one of them. Ugh, I want the bloke in charge. And because his face was right in front of mine, you couldn't avoid it. I could smell the alcohol in his breath. I had to breathe too, so I breathed in more alcohol that evening than I've ever done before. It wasn't that much, but you could smell it. It's really strong. I'm the bloke in charge. He had his fist this far from my nose. Interesting thing, I had all my helpers and supporters. They stopped whatever they were doing, not to help me, but to watch. Thank you, friends. That often happens. I don't know what the psychology is. They just want to see, they're more interested, how's this going to turn out? The bloke in charge. And it's a training I've had for years and years and years in Thailand before, and in meditation. You don't get smart and smug. You don't say anything. You don't smile. You just stand there, peaceful and calm. It's an amazing thing what you can do, because he couldn't do anything. He was stuck too. Because to have a fight, to have an argument, it has to be, I don't know a better word, you have to have foreplay first of all. Yeah, you and who else? Me and my monks, me and my gang of workers. Threats escalating, and eventually until the fists fly. So I was just standing there peaceful. Because you were standing there peaceful, not doing anything, just not even spreading loving kindness, but just being peaceful. He could not do anything. It was a strange experience, but I knew I had him in my complete control, total power. Just by doing nothing, by not being afraid. And in that time, the truck parked, and one of the other workers, the real boss, came out. He put his hand on the worker's shoulders, said, "Come on, let's unload the chairs." And I said, "Yeah, I'll come and give you a hand." And we walked together. No fists, no punches were thrown, no arguments. A very lucky monk to be able to do that, but it worked. And that's an amazing thing what you can do. One of the other, when I'm into it, I don't know, I sometimes have a plan what I'm going to talk about, but I never keep the plans. I don't know why I even bothered to make the plans. One of the other stories which the monks like hearing, when I was young, there was not much Buddhism which I could go to or see, but there was one TV show, I think on one of the channels, when I was a school teacher, I think, and that was Kung Fu. I think the actor was David Carradine or something. But I used to watch that. And my fellow teachers at school, I was a teacher at this time, I said, "Oh, it's a great program." And one of them said, quite fairly, "If that's a Buddhist monk, why is there so much violence?" He had a point. And I said, it's because that's the only way that TV shows sell. Someone once told me there was a photograph of this actress in one of the big TV shows, I think Sex and the City. What's her name? One of the film stars there. Sorry? No. Sarah Jessica Parker, that's it. Sarah Jessica Parker was in a coffee shop. Someone photographed her reading Opening the Door of Your Heart, my book. She was like a closet Buddhist. And so I thought, wow, I'm sure she must like that book. It's a very inspiring book. And I thought, what's going to happen next? I'm probably going to get an invitation to do a cameo appearance on Sex and the City. Should I accept being a Buddhist monk? And so I thought, if she does send me a letter inviting me onto Sex and the City, we'd have to change the name. No sex in the monastery. And of course, no invitation came. But anyway, the violent one about Kung Fu. I never did any martial arts when I was young, but you saw it on the TV. So on this one occasion, visiting my mother in London and going to give a talk in the Sri Lankan Vihara in Chiswick in the evening. That's the area where I grew up. So I know that so well. It's nice exercise in the evening. But there's some of those housing estates had actually grown much more rough than when I used to live in that area. Most of them became what they call no-go areas for the police. I was walking down one of the streets on the way to Chiswick, past one of those big housing estates. And as I was walking down the road, some of these gang members, young kids, 13, 14, 15, 16, I forget the age, about that age, they were congregating. meeting one another, growing in numbers, just looking for something to do for their evening. And they saw me coming towards them. Bald head, brown robes. So I must say, they weren't totally stupid, they knew who I was. So they started chanting, Buddha, 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 looking at me with his violent, threatening eyes. And as I go closer, the frequency of the chant got higher and louder. Buddha, 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 Buddha. They were trying to intimidate me. I am rebellious. That's going to get me into big trouble one day if it already hasn't. Buddha, 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 Buddha. I was not going to be scared. So I walked straight towards them. Just one monk against about a dozen hoodlums. Buddha, 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 Buddha. And as I got closer, that's when I raised my hands in a kung fu pose. What I thought was a kung fu pose. I know nothing about kung fu, just what I remembered from the TV. I actually did this, absolutely stupid. But I did the kung fu pose and I carried on walking. Buddha, 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 Buddha. And as I got close enough, they just parted and they let me right through. It must have been a better imitation of kung fu than I thought. But what it kind of teaches you is that if you've got a good, kind mind, you do become kind of invulnerable. People don't want to hurt you or attack you. Anyway, back to the Nalagiri strategy. Why do I even mention that? Is because sometimes we have all these hindrances come at once. A lot of problems in meditation. You can't sit, you can't walk, you lay down, you can't go to sleep. Your mind's going crazy. So what do? Just like Nalagiri. Hindrances. The door of my heart is open to you. You can make me crazy, you can kill me, you can give me no peace at all for the whole rest of my life. Mind, the door of my heart is always open to you. See what happens. It's illogical, but it's incredibly powerful. The key story, which I was going to say earlier, but I put off until now, of the Buddha was the story of the anger-eating monster. The anger-eating monster story goes like this. You may know anger-eating monsters at work or at home. This particular story, there was a lady, a nice lady, who happened to be the empress of this country. She was also a good Buddhist. So she went to the temple one evening, the BF in Lavender Road, and after the evening talk, she went back home and she found that a monster, this demon, this big, angry, violent, huge, weird-looking being had come into her palace. And all the guards, security, police, everyone who's supposed to be guarding the palace was so scared and frightened of this monster. It was much bigger than them. They didn't try and protect the palace. They hid behind the flower pots. They went into the cupboards to hide. And they let this monster go right into the main room of the palace and sit on the throne of the empress. And for some of the guards, that was a bit too much, going too far. And they said to this monster, "Get out of here. You don't belong. This is our empress's chair. You'll be in big trouble. She'll be back soon from the temple. Get out." And at every unkind word, every unkind deed or unkind thought, the monster grew an inch bigger, grew more violent. The words coming out of his mouth were even worse, and even the smell coming from his body got worse. And that just made him more upset. Look, get out, or carve your butt out, with our swords. We've been well trained for this. Get out now. But the monster kept on growing bigger and bigger, angrier and angrier, uglier and uglier, smellier and smellier. And sometimes I ask people, because I haven't seen movies for a while, what was the most scary monster in any movie? I know that some people, I haven't seen this, Alien? Was the monster in Alien scary? Or like the shark in Jaws? What's the most dangerous monster you've ever seen? Me? No, say that Alien. And this monster was 100 times scarier than any monster which Steven Spielberg could. Is he still in business? Yeah. Oh, he is, okay. That any producer in Hollywood could concoct. Really ugly. And the words coming out of this monster's mouth, that would just make, anybody cringe. It was worse than you'd hear in a pub in Glasgow on a Saturday night. I've got nothing against Glaswegians, so it just came into my mind. And the smell coming off his body. There were maggots on his body, and even the maggots got sick and threw up. They couldn't stand the stench. And that was when the Empress came in and saw this huge, ugly, stinky monster on her chair, her throne. Remember, she'd just been to the temple, to the Buddhist Fellowship in Lavender Road. Actually, it's not open yet, is it? No. This is only a story. Don't worry about the details. So, what did the Empress do? The reason why she was the boss, not because she was the strongest, but because she was the wisest. She knew exactly what to do. She saw that frightening, violent, disgusting monster and said, "Welcome. Thank you for dropping in. Why have you waited so long to pay me a visit? Has anyone got you a cup of tea yet?" We have many types of tea in this temple. We have green tea, we have Earl Grey, we have Dilmah, even with condensed milk, if you like some condensed milk, Mr. Monster. You like some biscuits with it? How about some sandwiches? I don't know if you like Mama noodles, but I can get some of that for you if you wish. Somebody suggested a pizza. I'm not sure if you have this in Singapore, but in Australia they have monster-sized pizzas. So that'll be suitable for you. So someone rang out for a pizza, and they were serious. It wasn't just playing games. They changed their attitude to one of kindness, in line with the Empress. A couple of the soldiers came up and said, "Would you like a foot massage?" You know how rare it is for a monster to get a foot massage. In fact, he has such big feet, they had to call in some helpers. Had about 10 people give him a foot massage. And then also a back massage. This monster had such an enormous head. You can imagine, always has sore shoulders. So a few people gave him a nice neck massage or a shoulder massage. It was really lovely. And the monster would always say, "Just a little bit over there. Oh yeah, that's nice." And they were so kind to this monster. And every kind act, kind word or kind thought, the monster grew an inch smaller, less ugly, less offensive in his speech, and even the smell started to improve. And so everybody was giving so much kindness to this monster. The monster soon got to the size when he first came into the palace. They kept on being kind, until the monster got so small that one more act of kindness, before even the pizza boy came in with the delivery, the monster got so small, one more act of kindness, and the monster vanished completely away. And that's based on a story in the suttas, in the Yaka Samyutta, the anger-eating monster. When I saw that, I thought, that's amazing psychology. Of course, in the original story, they didn't have any pizzas. They didn't have a choice of tea. There's many things I add, but the essence of the story, it was still the same. You give anger and it gets bigger and more violent and worse. You give kindness and it gets smaller until it disappears, has no problem. So the attack of all the hindrances, you're really upset, you're getting angry, nothing's working. Say to your mind, thank you for coming to visit me. Sloth and torpor, thank you for coming into my mind. Restlessness, all these stupid ideas. I don't think I judge you too much. Stupid ideas, if you want to come in, you can. Be kind to them. Imagine just all those silly fantasies, just stroke them. Their fantasy, their fantasy. Like Nalagiri's trunk. You can come in if you want. You don't have to, but if you want, I won't throw you out. I won't get angry at you. Use these kind responses, and you'll find all those hindrances will get weaker and smaller until they disappear. One of the things I'm going to add now, because I wanted to, but I didn't have time before, when you try to let go of the past and future, one important method is first of all, be kind to the past and be kind to the future. What I mean is, I don't know who the actors were in this play we call life and our past events. When you're kind to them, whoever it was who treated you so badly, they've got their problems and defilements as well. They were doing it because of cause and effect. And maybe they're going to reap the sad benefits of that. It's not as punishment, but just as cause and effect. And even you may have not done the best thing, but you did what you thought was the best. You were trying the hardest to be a good person. It just didn't work out. You made some poor choices. But we do make poor choices. So when you're kind to the past, it's more forgiving. In my own story of my father, before he died, I would always want to know about his father, my paternal grandfather. And my dad would never talk about his father, my paternal grandfather. Eventually, because I pestered my dad so much, my father told me about him. And the first thing he said, and my father never usually swore, not certainly in front of his children, but this time he said, my father, your grandfather, was a bastard. It's a terrible thing to say about your own dad. But then he explained, these were in the years of the Depression, in Liverpool, that's where my father was from. And he said his father was a plumber. When he could get work, after work he would go to the pub, get drunk. When he'd come home, he said he'd take off his belt and he'd beat any kid who just happened to be there. Many times my own dad was the end of that belt, just because he couldn't run away fast enough. My father said, even though that hurt, that wasn't as painful as then seeing his father use the belt on his mother. He was domestic abuse, really big time. And the worst thing was my father couldn't do anything. He was just a small kid. There's no one to complain to. But every time he saw that, he made a resolution. He said, if ever I survive this, if ever I manage to grow up, if ever I manage to fall in love and get married, if ever I have kids, I will never spank them or beat them at all. He never could. That's a weird thing. I never knew why, but sometimes my brother and I, he was older brother, would have a fight. My dad would come into the room with a slipper, and he just would walk out of the room again. He couldn't hit us. I didn't understand why. Because it brought back all these painful memories of what had happened to him, and how that abuse of children turned to abuse of the wife. And he just couldn't take that anymore. So he's one of the kindest fathers you could imagine. I think you do sometimes choose your parents. I think I chose well, getting a dad like that. Shame he didn't live long enough. It was long enough, but didn't live longer. But nevertheless, that you can see there was a different way to react to abuse. Learn from it. Grow from it. Become a better human being as a result. So anyway, there we go, talking too much anyway. I never actually... Okay, I'm going to do this afternoon during the Sutta class. I wanted to actually talk about breath meditation. Never even got close. But I did talk about some of the hindrances. And the most important one was when it's really strong, no matter if it's strong or weak, whatever it is, welcome the hindrances in. Monster, the door of my heart is open to you. Respond to them with kindness. And it's so easy, the past just vanishes. It's easy to let go of. It's not so heavy, not so solid, not so important for you anymore. Same with the future, with kindness. What's going to happen to you when you go back to Singapore? Be kind to the future. There you go, future. It doesn't matter. If that happens, that's fine. I know how to cope. When you're kind to the future, you find even the future turns out much better than you ever expect. It's a weird thing. You can try it. And that way you can let go of past and future. Restlessness, ill will, everything tends to get weak and vanish. If you're angry at the past, it's impossible to let go of. You're kind to it. Thank you for teaching me an important lesson in life. Okay, and that helps with your meditation. If it doesn't, never mind. You could ask for your money back from your teacher. I don't get anything anyway, just so you can't get anything back. You can ask, I suppose, for the tea back. Yeah. Get all the tea you offered me, I can give it back to you. Okay, enough. Sadhu, sadhu, sadhu. That's actually one of the sales techniques for my books. I think we do have some of those books for sale later on. Yes, Saturday. But if any of those books you don't like, I promise you in front of everybody, in front of the Buddha, you can always ask for your money back. Anything which I write, which is for sale, and you buy something, I promise you, you may always ask for your money back. Honestly. You can ask for it. I didn't say you'll get it back. But I promise you can ask. Okay, sadhu, sadhu, sadhu. I'm lost as a monk. I should be a businessman.